In this video, we're going to talk all about the Servants of Apocalypse. Hey guys, Rich from Rich Mid Gaming. Hope everyone is doing fantastically well. And whilst I was away on holiday last week, end of July, beginning of August, we did get the full panel to play for Apocalypse, who we have done a breakdown video of already, but we only had part of the information. We didn't have his front and back side, and the one big missing key ingredient from this affiliation was going to be that full affiliation list and which of the characters already in the game were going to be able to be servants of Apocalypse, or servants of the Apocalypse, I should say. And I think there's a few surprises in there that people probably didn't expect. So in this video, we're going to do a quick recap of Apocalypse himself. We're going to take a look at his leadership, and then we're going to take a look at the Horsemen of the Apocalypse, the 4 different types that we've got, so death, famine, pestilence, and war. And then I'm going to go through, pick some of my favourites for each choice, and then I've got a roster that I've already built, already put together, that I'm going to take you through. So let's jump in and take a look at the main man himself, Apocalypse, aka Sabah Nur. So Apocalypse then, and again we've seen this side of his card. He's going to be a 6 threat, falls across the board, 7 stamina on his front. He's a large base, medium move, so gets about really quickly around the board. He's got 1 builder, which is going to be strength 7, range 3, power equal to damage dealt, but he gets to choose all of the 3 types of attack types, so physical, energy, or mystic. And then he's got a weird thing where on a wild he can give out either shock or root, but if the character has already got shock and root, he gets to throw them away short instead. Now, he can obviously dish out those himself, but there are some other ways of being able to dish those conditions out, which we'll take a look at. Sabah Nur's Judgment. This is going to be his spender. It's just a straight up 8 dice spender, costs 3, but 2 dice for each condition the target character has. So that's quite nice. I found myself not using this too much, mainly because of that range 2. I often find that I'm not quite within range 2 of people, but it's nice to have it there, and it's a nice bit of a power dump, because one of the things I have found is that Apocalypse generates a lot of power, but he doesn't necessarily have a huge number of things to be spending it on. We're going to skip the Apocalypse's Horseman for the moment. Celestial Technology, costs 4. You use this in the power phase, and you can choose up to 2 other allied characters within 5. They drop all their objective tokens, and they're placed within 1 of Apocalypse. Now, there's a couple of characters in particular who are really nice to be able to do this on, because the one thing with Apocalypse is, whilst he does have that only strongest will remain, so every time he takes damage from an attack, he can heal 1, and that's just innate. And he does have a fairly nice big stamina pool. That's kind of it for his defensive tech. So if your opponent does want to focus him down, they can focus him down quite easily. And sort of before we get into the video, I've had a few people asking me, how do we deal with Apocalypse? Well, that's going to be the way that you deal with Apocalypse and his servants are you take Apocalypse down. That's really the only way that that I've seen so far that works so effectively. Because whilst it only turns off part of his leadership, so all the horsemen still get the cards, it makes it very difficult, because they don't get the extra power generation from the different tokens that they get and things like that. So yeah, you will be remade through me. This is going to cost 1 each reactive. Basically, when somebody would already get a condition that they already have. So your opponent, let's say that you've taken Sabretooth and you do your first attack and they get a bleed, and then you do another attack and they would get another bleed. He can spend a fat power. As long as he's within range 5, he can then give them either bleed, shock, slow, or incinerate. Obviously not bleed in the example that I just gave there. And then each character can only be affected by this once per turn. And then, as we mentioned, only the strong remain. After attack targeting this character is resolved, if he suffered damage, he may remove 1 damage from himself. Additionally, once per turn, when this character would gain a special condition it is immune to, it may either gain a power or remove 1 damage. And on this side of his card, he's going to be immune to bleed, incinerate, and stun. Now, just a quick timing note on this, and I did double check with the mods of the forum, so thank you to you guys. If you're watching, you know who you are. And because it states once per turn, if you have a crisis that is giving out conditions, let's say Demons Downtown, for example, that would give out incinerate, because that happens during I think it's the power phase, that one, but it doesn't matter whether it's power or cleanup phase, because that's not during a turn, he doesn't get to do that. So even though he doesn't get the incinerate, because it's not during a turn, he doesn't get to remove a damage or give himself an extra power. Because I was thinking that would be some really nice kind of turn 1 plays. You play on Demons because he's a big base. You can start him out at the front of Demons and he would get an extra power, but that is not the case. Okay, let's quickly move on and take a look at the reverse side of his card, which is the side that we hadn't seen before. Now, there are only 2 changes to this side of his card, and that is going to be his stamina is going to increase from 7 up to 8. Everything else remains exactly the same, with the exception of his immunity, and it is all special conditions. So all of a sudden, that only the strong remain goes into overdrive, because your opponent really needs to think about what attacks they're doing into him, because a lot of the attacks out there that can dish out conditions, they are non-optional. So if you get a wild on a character that dishes out bleed, you have to give out that bleed. It's not may, which means he can be healing up quite a lot, which he's definitely going to need, because, as I mentioned, people are going to be trying to target him down quite seriously. But we do have a couple of characters up our sleeve who are hopefully going to help out with that. Okay then, so Apocalypse's Horseman. When this leadership is chosen, this character is assigned the Master of the Horseman card. Then you may assign Death, Famine, Pestilence and War to eligible servants of the Apocalypse. No character may be assigned more than 1 card, so that's fine. So what does the Master of the Horseman card do? Well, this is the Horseman card that Apocalypse gets, and once per turn during his activation, Apocalypse may use one of the active superpowers on any Horseman card that was assigned to an allied character by the Apocalypse's Horseman leadership. So basically, you pick your 3 characters that you're taking with you, you give them a different Horseman card each. Each one of them has got an ability on there or a superpower on there, and you get to use it, basically. But Apocalypse can only use it once per turn. When Apocalypse is KO'd, this card is removed from play after the effect is resolved. And that's the key thing here, is that whilst the Horseman cards remain in play, the other Horseman cards on your characters, Apocalypse does lose, or you do lose the full leadership, as you do with a lot of other, with all other affiliations. So during the power phase, this card gains 1 evolution token. You can have a maximum of 6. And then once per turn, while an allied character assigned a Horseman card, that includes Apocalypse himself, because this is his Horseman card, when they are attacking, defending, or dodging during the modified dice step, they may remove up to 3 tokens. For each token removed, they get to re-roll a die. So that's the first thing that they can do with these tokens, is they get to use them as re-rolls. So you're in a clutch, you need one extra thing to, one extra roll to save someone or take somebody out. You can use these as re-rolls. And then an allied character assigned a horseman card may spend evolution tokens on this card as if it were power on its stat card, but only to pay for the power cost of superpowers on horseman cards. So let's take a quick look at those horseman cards, and we'll refresh our memory on them. So you'll see each of them has an active. They all cost 2 apart from death, which is going to cost 3. So they're the parts of the cards that Apocalypse is going to have access to. Now, all of them state that they can only be used once per turn, with the exception of War. So that can be used as many times as you want per turn. But Apocalypse can only use one of these once per turn. So he doesn't get to use multiple of them. Now, the way that we've read it is that you can choose to use either power that is generated traditionally by your character to play these cards, or you can use the evolution tokens, or a combination of both. The wording in it is a little bit different to something like Red Skull, where he can use other people to pay power and things like that. It's slightly different on these. The wording's slightly different. So we believe you can use a combination of the two. If you can't, it's going to really drop them down a little bit, but I think it's going to be fine. I think you are going to be able to use them. So we've got War, Pestilence, Famine, and Death. War is going to be all around dice manipulation, so changing something into a hit for every crit and a wild. And then consuming Blight on Pestilence. You're going to be able to choose someone, and if they already have Poison, Root, or Slow, they suffer a damage, or they gain one of the following special conditions: Poison, Root, or Slow. And then we've got Vanish into Dust on Famine. This is probably my favourite of all of them. This is essentially the Space Gem, but with a little bit of extra on there. So you pay 2, choose one enemy within 2. If the enemy character is chosen in this way, it loses 1 power. So basically, you pay 2 power, your opponent's going to lose a power on one character, but they also then get to make a range 2 place, which is really the best part about this card. The other part is like a nice extra little thing, but if you're already within range 2 of them, you probably don't need to get out of range, or maybe you do. Maybe they've got martial artist, stealth, that kind of mix up, so you want to get out of something like that, and you do get to take that power off as an extra little kicker. But that for me is one of the really, really good things about this card. And then lastly, we've got Death, created to end. It's going to cost 3. Now, I've watched a few of other people's videos on this, and I've seen lots of people posting about it. And guys, a lot of people are getting this wrong. A lot of people are saying, oh, it's like so-and-so's ability, where, for each damage that you've got, you get to add X number of dice. That is not how this works. During the next attack this character makes this turn, add 1 die to the attack roll for each damage the target character has, to a maximum of 3. So if you make your first attack, you've got somebody on full health, you make your first attack, you don't use this, and you do 3 damage to them, you generate 3 power, which is very nice. You can then spend that 3 power to add 3 dice to your roll. It's nothing to do with the character that is attacking's health pool. It is the defending character that you are measuring that from. So if that defending character has taken no damage, then this isn't going to do anything. So it's a nice way of being able to kind of do that second follow-up attack, and be able to be able to not guarantee, but almost guarantee that damage there, and taking them out. Now, each of these cards have a way of being able to generate evolution tokens themselves. So with War, we've got Horseman of War. The first time each turn this character suffers damage from an enemy effect, and the first time each turn this character deals damage, after the effect is resolved, Master of the Horseman gains 1 evolution token. Now, there's some really nice synergy, in particular with one character who I think is really, really good for this. So, potentially generating an extra 1 evolution token per turn for most, but sometimes you can be generating 2 as well, which is really, really good. Horseman of Pestilence. Now, this one is going to be at the end of this character's activation. Master of the Horseman gains 1 evolution token for each enemy character that gained 1 or more special conditions during this character's activation. Now, you've got a guaranteed condition that you can dish out with Pestilence because of that Consuming Blight, which is going to gain you 1. But if you've got characters that can also dish out their own conditions as well, then they're going to stack up. And for each character that gained a condition, then hey ho, you're going to be able to get an evolution token for it. And remember that synergy there with the ability from Apocalypse. So even if it's something they've already got, Apocalypse can turn it into something else, which is quite nice. With Famine, this is going to be the easiest to achieve earlier on in the game. So the Horseman of Famine. At the end of this character's activation, if no non-dazed enemy characters are within 3 of it, you gain 1. So whilst it lets you gain the least, it's going to be the most consistent because it's going to be the one that you have full control over, basically, or in 99% of scenarios where you have full control over. And then lastly, we've got Horseman of Death. Once per turn, when another character is dazed or KO'd by this character, or this character is dazed or KO'd, after the effect is resolved, Master of the Horseman gains 3 evolution tokens. Now, I want to talk about these cards for a moment because I've played quite a few games now with Apocalypse, and for the first couple of games, no matter my threat level, because as long as you're at 16 threat or above, you are going to be able to play all 4 of these cards. And that is probably the wrong way to play it. What I would say is the ideal way to play Apocalypse is to maximize where possible the number of cards that you are taking, but take the best comp possible. Don't go with two threats, right? When you could just take a 4 threat that would ultimately do a much better job than those two threats combined. So it's a bit of balance. I would say that the turn 0 decisions that you have to make with Apocalypse and the Servants of the Apocalypse is at a much higher level than any of the other affiliations that we've ever had in this game. And these cards are the reason why. So there's a lot of careful consideration you need to go into, and it's now not just what threat level are we at. It's now not what are we playing in terms of extracts and secures. It's now a case of, well, there's every character in the Servants can be part of, has 2 cards that they can take, but they can only ever take 1. But there's a lot of crossover as well, so quite a lot of the characters can take the same 2 cards and things like that. So there's a lot of things you need to think about. And what I would say is, whilst I think all 4 of the cards are absolutely fine to take, the one that I would be prioritizing is probably the Famine card, purely because it's a bump, first of all, and it's a bump for Apocalypse as well. That's the other thing you have to remember, is it is a bump for Apocalypse. I also then really do like the War card. And then Pestilence or Death, I think you can choose depending on, what the setup is and who you've got in your list and who you want to take. I just want to round it out, guys. Just a couple of cards. You've got the first one. Apocalypse may spend 4 power to play this card. Choose an allied character. The allied character is KO'd. remove or activate a token from Apocalypse. If a chosen character was injured, Apocalypse gains the stagger special condition. Now, obviously, he can't gain the stagger special condition when he is on his flip side. So you kind of want to wait until the latter parts of the game, as you would do with this anyway. We've got some 2 threats in there who are, they're going to be prime targets for this, and you really only want to be using this as a last sort of hurrah to try and just win out a game. It's not something you're going to be doing turn 1, turn 2, but it's pretty nice. It's making it into all my lists. Then the other card that wasn't really anything to do with Apocalypse, but it comes in his box, is Survival. This is a must-take card, not just for this list, but I think this is almost the number one unaffiliated neutral card out there in the game right now. During the power phase, you spend X amount of power equal to the threat value of the card. They have to be injured, but they cannot be targeted. Basically, they can't take damage. They can't be use superpowers. Nothing can happen to them for the first round of the game. So where does this come into play? Well, it comes into play when your opponent is in a position where let's say they've managed to take down Apocalypse, but somehow they've still managed to keep priority. You can spend 6 power, play this card on Apocalypse, and they can't do anything to him, which is really good. Really, really good. It means that they can't do that double tap into your bigger characters, which, really changes up the game quite considerably. So not even just for Servants of Apocalypse list, but for every list in the game, this is a card that I am absolutely taking a look at right now, and in most cases it's making it in my roster. Okay guys, so with all that said and done, let's jump in and take a look at the Servants of Apocalypse, because it looks very different to every other affiliation list that we have seen, and there's a lot to take in here, and I'm not sure how else they could have done it, but I really struggled with looking at it like this to try and work out who I could take and who was where, and making sure I wasn't quadrupling up on one and then only having one person for another one, sort of thing. So Servants of Apocalypse, you've got Archangel, Beast, Cable, Cassandra Nova, Colossus, Deadpool, Gambit, Honey Badger, Iceman, Magic, Mr. Sinister, Psylocke, Sabretooth, the Blob, Toad, and Wolverine. Some of those are characters who we all knew were going to be in there, no surprises whatsoever. Some of them I would say are a servant adjacent, who have never really been a servant, but they've served Apocalypse, if that makes sense, or worked under him. Some of them are characters who have really had nothing to do with him, or not in mainstream stuff, maybe once in a comic at one point many moons ago, and there's some characters that are missing as well, and I've seen a lot of people complain about this list and where is this character, why is this character in here? And my answer to that, guys, is balance. This is still a game, and as with the affiliation list, you can't just put everyone everywhere they have been. I'm going to use Hulk as the example. If we had Hulk in here, it would just be crazy, right? At 15 threat, you can run Apocalypse, you can run Hulk, and then any 3 threat of your choice, and you are just going to ruffle stomp the entire board, especially if he was Death or War, whichever one it was that he was. But one of those two, it would have just been far too good. This is a crazy layout, and I trying to sit down and work it through this way didn't really sit well with me. So what I've done is I've taken each of them, and we've got the death card here that we're starting off with, and we're going to take a look at each of the characters that are part of death. So starting off, we've got Archangel, Honey Badger, Gambit, and Iceman, and then we've got Psylocke, Cassandra Nova, Toad, and Wolverine. And you will notice this, guys, weirdly, because whenever I'm doing these layouts and things, I'm always trying to work out what the best layout possible is. And for every single card, so every single Horseman card, they all had 4 characters that were on the new style cards and 4 characters that were on the old style cards, which did make me laugh. So AMG, if that was intentional for us content creators, thank you very much, because it did make creating this deck for this video much easier. So let's remind ourselves, death. During the next attack this character makes this turn, add 1 die to the attack roll for each damage the target character has, to a maximum of 3. And then also, Horseman of Death, once per turn, when another character is dazed or KO'd by this character, or when this character is dazed or KO'd, you get to gain 3 evolution tokens. So, options for here then. We want, very much focused around the killy side of things, but also somebody who can also take a punch for people as well. So what I'm going to do with each of these, and this is how I built my roster, is I'm going to pick out my favourite 2. And then that's how I'm going to build my roster out. So first one for death is going to be Wolverine. I would argue of all the characters on this list, he is the one that is the most capable of being able to murder somebody. And yeah, I just think he is. Combine this with his Berserker Barrage, best at what I do, Adamantium Slash that he's got. He's going to be really good at taking people out. Now, another rule is that I haven't picked the same character twice purposely, because if I did, then I couldn't build my list out in the way that I wanted to. So my other option for death, but not my only option, but my other option for death, I think is going to be Archangel. Now I still need to get some additional time with Archangel, and I'm still not 100% convinced by him. I also think Psylocke could do a good job, for example. Iceman is not a bad shout there as well. A couple of these other characters you're going to see pop up under other Horseman cards. So whilst, Honey Badger is a great option, I've also put her in somewhere else as well, so I can still use her with the death card. But these are the 2 that I've picked out. Like I said, I think Wolverine's an absolute in there. Archangel, I think I need a little bit more playtime with him just to work out his little kinks and things. Okay, next up then, we have got Famine. And starting out with Famine, we're going to have Deadpool, Magic, Gambit. So Gambit's second one is going to be Famine. And then Iceman, so again, Iceman's second one. And then we've got Psylocke, Cassandra Nova, again, that's their 2. Mr. Sinister, and the Blob. Some interesting ones in here. Remember, this is all around giving yourself a placement. So either getting into trouble or indeed getting out of trouble, but also being able to gain that 1 evolution token for being outside of range 3 of anybody else. And when I look at this, there's one person to me that stands out who not only excels at making sure she's out of range 3, but really wants to make sure she is out of range 3, and that's going to be Cassandra Nova. Now, she's got her mind projection, I think it is. She's got her 1 cost spender that basically, as just a straight up thing that it doesn't need a trigger or anything like that, she gets to advance them their speed, which is really good. She's also got her tricks and traps type thing. I always forget what it is, and meaning that if anyone moves within range 3 of her, she gets to spend the power, roll 4 dice. If she does a damage, she gets to move out of the way. And she's got a pseudo stealth on there as well that does the same thing as stealth but isn't called stealth. So that's really nice. Again, there are other characters on here, or at least one other character on here who does have stealth in the form of Psylocke. You've also got Mr. Sinister, who can move people out of the way as well. Magic can do it, but it's via a tactics card. Obviously, the Blob can push people as well. But what I was looking for here was, I see this as really being a a bit of a back point holder. And sometimes it's nice to just have a character who can walk up turn one, maybe pick up an objective that isn't a backline objective, walk back, stay on their back point, keep themselves out of range 3, generate an extra power into the pot so that when you do get to maybe a Apocalypse turn, there's 2 power ready and waiting for him to be able to do a Vanish into the Dust, because that large base range 2 place gets him so far up the board. So I've gone with Deadpool. He's a 3 cost. He's got his bang with his now only bang bang there as well. But I think he's a really, really good, solid choice for this. He counts as being healthy when he flips to his injured side. He's got healing factor 2, even though on his front side he's only got 4 stamina, but on his back I think he goes up to 5 or maybe even 6. He can dish out some real damage, but as I say, he's a low cost back point holder option that I think could work really, really well. Like I say, I really want to play some more games with Cassandra Nova because I really like the idea of her being famine. But I do think that Deadpool could be viable as well. Again, there is at least one other character in my overall roster who can make this. I've tried to make sure I've got at least 3 options for each card just to give me as much flexibility as possible. And I want them all at different threat levels as well if I can. So with this one, I've got a really high threat level in Cassandra Nova being 5 threat, but then a low threat option with Deadpool. Okay then, Pestilence. And as I say, probably one of my least favourites of the cards, but again, if you can run it, you may as well still take it. We have got Archangel, we've got Toad, we've got Sabretooth, and we've got Cable. So a couple of 4 threats, a 5 threat, and a 2 threat in there. And then rounding it out, we have got Colossus, Beast, Mr. Sinister, and the Blob. Now, all of these characters can dish out their own conditions, with the exception of Beast and Blob, which, to be fair, Beast has never been one of my favourite characters anyway. Blob, I'm not a huge fan of either. I did play quite a few games with Mr. Sinister. I was trying to use his cards at the beginning of the game, taking a lot of healing factor characters, giving them a damage, knowing that they would heal that back at the beginning of their turn. But I'm less of a fan now of Mr. Sinister than I was with this. It's just not good enough, or he as a character is just not good enough. So I went for a character as my first choice who I think wants to be in and around things anyway, right? He's going to be within range 2. But going to back what I mentioned earlier, in that Apocalypse is quite easy to take down. So what's the best way of being able to mitigate that? Well, taking a character like Colossus who has a bodyguard on him. So really, really doesn't care. Really doesn't care whatsoever. And so I think he's a great choice, not just for Pestilence, but for the affiliation overall. And then my other option is going to be Toad. Now, Toad can dish out conditions. Obviously, he's got his incinerate off the back of his tongue thing that he's got, spit acid, which is quite nice. But really, Toad is just such a good character that I think he has to be taken. He really does have to be taken. Now, again, I've got at least 2, maybe 3 other characters in my roster who are going to be eligible. We already know that Archangel is in there. There's a couple of others who are in there as well. So I've got a lot of options in there, but I wanted to take Toad, so he was my choice for this one. Okay, so let's round things out and take a look at War. So during the next attack made by this character this turn, if the target character is within 2, this character may change 1 die result to a hit for each crit or wild in the attack roll. And the Horseman of War, the first time each turn this character suffers damage from an enemy effect, and the first time they deal damage, they get 1 evolution token. So we've got Deadpool, Honey Badger, Magic, and Cable. And then we've got Colossus, Beast, Sabretooth, and Wolverine. So Wolverine, obviously, we've already seen him in a previous list, so he's also a great candidate for this as well. Colossus, we already mentioned, is a great candidate for the War one because he can take that damage and is going to be gaining that evolution token in your opponent's turn. But the one that I've gone with as my first choice is Sabretooth. First of all, being able to get some extra damage off with that Savage Predator, for example, or even with his Claw Rush, Claw Slash, is going to be really, really nice. But he also has the clapback mechanic. So that Horseman of War, if he takes damage, he's essentially going to be able to generate 1 token from the damage he takes, but then also if he claps back, he's going to be able to generate damage from that as well. He's also a long mover, which is most definitely not to be sniffed at. And then my other choice is going to be Honey Badger. Now again, Honey Badger is in there purely because she really plays into the attrition game, so reducing the dice that your opponent have for defense. But also, she can act as a bodyguard. So it works in, it's kind of like the reverse bodyguard sort of thing. But again, Colossus and Honey Badger, being able to bring them in close to Apocalypse so that he's got some people around him who can keep him safe is going to be much, much needed, I think, when you get some reps in with him. So guys, you may be thinking, well, that's only 9 characters, Rich. You've got Apocalypse and then 2 choices from each of the Horseman cards. And you will be right. So I did need a 10th character. And I think I may have messed up in this video and mentioned them both once already, saying that I had them. And that was Cable and Magic. So they were the 2 that I were looking at. Now, Magic, great 3-threat piece. Brings some cheaper mystic attacks. Brings a great card with Journey into Limbo, either to displace your opponent or indeed to move somebody like Apocalypse up who is immune to that Incinerate. So not only do you get to put the move on him, but you will also give him an Incinerate that he is immune to. So he potentially heals 1 as well, which is quite nice. But in the end, I went with Cable. Now, the reason I went with Cable is I just really like playing taller lists. I like to get some big beefy boys on the table, and with the updates to Cable, I think he's a solid piece. It brought me some terrain throws that I was really lacking for that extra little bit of damage, but also he can boost the defense of Apocalypse, and he also doesn't mind being in the mix of things and really getting involved in it. And it did kind of give me a pseudo choice to be able to then go down the route of having a Weapon X list as well, because of the an X-Force list because of the other characters that are in there, which I don't think I'll play. The roster I've put together is very much an Apocalypse roster, but let's just go through and I'll show you what it is that I've put together. So for the characters, we've obviously got Archangel, Apocalypse, Cable, Cassandra Nova, Colossus, Deadpool, Honey Badger, Sabretooth, Toad, and Wolverine. We've then got Gamma Wave, Infinity Formula, Mayor Fisk, Deadly Legacy Virus, Fear Grips, and Montesi Formula. Now, why have I gone and why have I chosen these particular ones? Well, first of all, Gamma Wave. We've got lots of really nice synergy, lots of displacement. People want to be in and around each other. Bodyguards from Honey Badger and Colossus. We've also got some AoE attacks from the likes of Cable, who can do some serious damage. You could put an Iceman in here, for example, with his beam attack or something like that. There's lots of these characters are going to be quite interchangeable, but Gamma Wave's a favourite of mine, so I went with it. We've got Infinity Formula. The reason I went for this is it's a little bit more spread out, but the extra power is obviously always nice. Never a bad thing when there's all of these characters have got lots of things they want to be spending power on. But also, I have a lot of characters who I would say are very independent characters who one-on-one can take down characters by themselves. They're also quite defensive minded as well. Cable's a great point holder by himself. Obviously, Apocalypse really is. Wolverine one-on-one with most characters out there is going to cause them a problem. Similar with Sabretooth. You know, in these situations, it's probably not one where I would be taking Honey Badger or a Colossus, for example, but I did like that as an idea. And then we've got Maya Fisk. I've already got 2 characters on my team who are immune to stun off the bat, and that's Apocalypse and Wolverine, so I can go and contest them without worrying too much about getting that stun. Obviously, Honey Badger can't contest anyway, so can never get that stun, and I can have Cassandra Nova and people like that move people off the points very, very easily. We then got Deadly Legacy Virus. The reason for this one, and indeed Montesi formula, is they're quite low scoring. And this is going to be an attrition-focused list. So I want fewer objectives out there. So both of those only have 2. And with the removal of mission objective, I think it's much, much harder now to be able to pull off the Deadly Legacy Virus and actually score all of those VPs. And we do have Toad in there as well if we did want to do that. Fear Grips, look, this is just a really, really nice card. Turn 1 for Apocalypse, he's already going to be within range 1. If we do get an extra evolution token in the pot, Apocalypse can use his own power to pick up the extract, and then he can use the 2 power in the pot to be able to teleport himself up, and then, you know, just start causing destruction from there on in. Tactics cards. Let's start with the restricted, because there are no affiliated tactics cards in this entire affiliation. But for the restricted, I've gone with Brace and Sacrifice. Brace because I've got a lot of bigger characters. You know, Apocalypse is size 4, Colossus is 3, Sabretooth is 3, Wolverine, for the purposes of being thrown, counts as 3. So, you know, lots of characters there that can do some serious damage. And then I also went for Sacrifice. I've got a great target in Sacrifice with somebody like Sabretooth, who, you know, can really, really take a hit. But again, it was just another way of being able to keep Apocalypse safer, and another way of being able to do that, just in case, you know, Honey Badger didn't have the power, or Colossus didn't have the power. This is another way of them being able to take that hit for Apocalypse. We did take the card, where's it gone now? The first one. So we did bring this with us as well. And then other character-based cards. We took, what have we got here? Happy Birthday Runt. I do quite like this. It's not played by a lot of people, but I do like it. And again, the fact that he can use it out of activation is really, really nice indeed. We've got Mental Domination from Cassandra Nova, which again is going to let us move people around. It's going to let us do some attacks with them as well, which again is quite good. Fastball Special. So, you know, if we are playing Colossus and Wolverine, more damage there that we can dish out. And I did also take Weapon X Program. It's a card that doesn't see a lot of play, but I think could be really, really good with that extra pool of power that we've got to do things like rerolls and use for our bonus superpowers. I think that these guys could generate enough power, and it could definitely be worthwhile taking it. I also have taken then as sort of generic cards. I've got 3 in here. We've got Fallback. This was Journey Through Limbo, but then at the last minute I did change it away. Again, just giving us a little bit more survivability in there. You know, somebody like a Cassandra Nova, if she doesn't quite get off her psychic distraction, then if she does take a hit, she can then move away and hopefully get into that stealth or pseudo stealth range. Joint Effort, which you know, when we're playing on something like Gamma Wave, really comes into its own. Now that it's activation, it does make it a little bit better, although, you know, I only really have one character who's going to make full use of that. Would be better with some more beam characters in there, I think. And then lastly, we've got Survival. I already mentioned this. I already spoke about this card. It's so good. Let's just put it in the middle here. And it's, for me, going to be an absolute must take. But yeah, there we go, guys. That is my Servants of the Apocalypse roster. That's my little breakdown of them. We're going to be doing a couple more videos on Apocalypse as we play more games, as we get some more game time in, as we get more reps in. I'm sure this list, as most of my lists do, will change as I get more and more games in. This is going to be what I'm playing moving forward over the next at least 6 to 8 weeks. Get some reps in. I am moving house, as I mentioned, so I won't be getting as many in as I would like. But let me know in the comment section below, what do you guys think? Have you managed to get any games in with Apocalypse? If so, is there anything I'm missing? Are there any characters that you are like, Rich, you need to get rid of this one and put this one in? I think the ones that are up for debate for me right now are probably Archangel. I need to get some more game time with him in there. And I think either Archangel or Cable could be swapped out very easily for Magic. And if I do, then probably something like Fallback or Joint Effort would get swapped out for Journey. Journey into or Journey through Limbo. I can never remember what it is called. Guys, I want to give a big shout out to all of our Patreon and now YouTube members as well. You guys really do make the running of the channel that much easier for all of the giveaways that we do, all of the prizes that we do, and just the general running of the channel. Everything we make from those goes right back into it, whether it's buying extra equipment to be able to do things. As I mentioned, I'm moving house, about to have a much bigger gaming space, so expect to see some live battle reports coming when I say very soon, in the next couple of months. But in particular, I want to give a big shout out to Philip Lemaire, who just became a member on Patreon, and I want to give a big shout out to Justin McClure, who became our first ever YouTube member. So thank you to you two and to the rest of you for supporting us. And if anybody else wants to support us, you can do so from as little as £1 a month. There'll be a link down in the description below to our Patreon, or you can just press that join button to become a YouTube member. But you don't need to do either of those things. Just simply liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing really does help, and it really goes a long way to helping with the growth of the channel. We do have a giveaway running at the moment, guys, our monthly $25 giveaway. If you want to be part of that, go over to YouTube. You're already on it, but go over to the community part. Take a look at the picture that I put up. It's the second one down, I think, because I did just show my name more off as well. Go and take a look at that. Let me know what you think I'm painting. Leave a comment in that community part, and I'm going to pick somebody who got it right at random, and they'll win themselves a $25 voucher for Amazon, or anything else that you want. It really doesn't matter to me. Big shout out to Leoda's Games, sponsor of the channel. I've just got a whole bag of new stuff from them as well. So I've got some new Asgard terrain. I've got the new Asgard box. We've got some new Shatterpoint stuff. So we're going to be opening up that at some point, and I'll give you my thoughts on the terrain in particular. Haven't done a terrain breakdown for a little while, so thought it'd be worth doing one of those. And as always, guys, it leaves me with just enough time to say stay well, keep safe, and until next time, bye for now.